Hello. Oh, you're muted, I think. Either muted or no mic.
Video, audio. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, this is good.
I have finished my piece.
Very good.
Took a while, but I have 1,000 words.
Good.
Should be enough for 2 pages.
Yeah, 1,000 words is good.
I just have to do a quick pass through to find some mistake structure and things like that. But I'm sending it to some people today already to do a little review, and then I'll send it over your way.
Thank you. Just trying to export a transcript thing here.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit weird.
My friend told me that he finished the transcripts for you. How was it?
You did, and it's very good. I'm very happy, but so far I haven't been able to reply. I've just been completely consumed with the meeting that I just had today.
I bet. We want to hear all about it.
Yeah, I will talk holes in your ears. Oh, well, your holes in your head. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Adam.
Hello.
I think Mark is joining us in a second. I hope Peter can, despite time difference. Yeah, it was a very positive meeting. It wasn't one of those positive, polite, and then, go away type meetings. So that was very good. Adam, did you see the presentation for Vint that I secretly put an email to you guys? Because it does feature video of your work in one of the last slides.
Was that the presentation you mean? Only the presentation or a video of the presentation?
Video of the presentation.
No, I missed that. Was I on the CC list there?
Oh, yes. Hang on.
Then I have to check again.
To yeah, it was subject visualizing SCP and reader as link. So I replied to yours.
Okay.
So it's both 5 minutes in and Mark has joined us. He now has a fancy new Mac, but he still absolutely has to use a crappy old camera. Can't use his fancy new 1080p camera, but okay, fair enough.
Oh no, I'm using my, this is my
Beauty light.
no, it's this is a Logitech Screen Cam. So it's a USB thing. I got it at the beginning of the lockdown because I thought I'm going to be doing lots of this. I see the way the world is going.
But have you tried your new the screen?
If you hold on a second, we can do. So I should. That's the face. This is the MacBook Pro's one. So that's pretty good actually.
It is 1080 now. But yeah,
Is that the new Mac?
You,
is that the new Mac?
Mark, right?
Yes, I'm embarrassed to say yes, it is. I went to the shiny store and I put all the money I didn't have into a new computer.
Yeah.
It happens to all of us.
Well, the funny thing is that it reminded me of the fact that for years and years, You know, every time I buy a new MacBook Pro for sort of work kind of thing, it always seemed to cost about £3,000. And then I had some MacBook Airs, and I remember thinking how cheap they are. And funny enough, this MacBook Pro cost £3,000. By the time I'd done the extra bits and pieces and the cover and stuff. I mean, and I'm not complaining at all. It's just amusing the fact that it seems to have sort of stayed. It's got faster every time. It just hasn't got less. So it's the 14-inch with the top spec M1 Pro chip, 32 gigs of RAM.
That's the one that I'm planning on getting as well. The 14-inch with a little bit more hard drive, a little bit more of some of the other.
Yeah, I got a terabyte. I thought more than that, to be honest. You might as well use external drives these days.
Yes.
And I couldn't quite bring myself to have all the extra RAM. That I'm sure it would be nice. The thing I would say from using it briefly is that the notch is, especially on the 14-inch, because you've got the smaller screen, is a right roll pain in the backside. It's fine with external screens. The problem is not the menus, because you've normally got shortcuts for most of the menus, but it's all the right side menu bar things. Because if you've got enough of them, they just disappear behind the notch, and there's absolutely nothing you can do. Because although you can control drag the menu bar items in the order you want, what you can't do is you can't drag the ones you can't see behind the notch. So I'm sure someone will eventually come up. I suspect there'll be a setting you can do that pushes the menu bar lower.
There's definitely going to be like unify menu bar icons, and then there's like one little icon that pops up with all the other icons.
But I have to say, this is a deliciously first world problem to have, so I'm not complaining too much.
Yeah, it's a good machine.
It's smooth, yeah.
So now there's 6 of us. So I think I should do a little report on the Adobe meeting today. It went very, very well. I met with Leonard, who was in charge of PDF. And I met with, I'm blanking now, Andy. The reason I'm blanking is his name is Andy Parsons, which is also the name of a British comedian. So I keep getting him a bit confused in my head. And Mark, can you mute, please? Okay, having housework stuff. Yeah, so obviously, it was only a half-an-hour meeting, so I was obviously quite concerned about how they would take these things. But there was a clear interest back and forth, lots of discussion around this. And, they pointed out that what we're doing here is basically academic documents. What they have to look at is every kind of PDF, which could be anything. And in a lot of cases, having stuff at the end just isn't useful. Of course, we agree with that. And also, they said that they've been focusing on aligning the metadata with its location, because from their view of users, reuse and edits is a big thing. Like they would take different PDFs and put them together in a different way. So that was also a very worthwhile comment. So they completely agreed with kind of the openness we're doing it, the fact that it's on the extra page at the end, very robust, all of that stuff. So when we went into a few different directions, it was good to refer to what we've been talking about over the last 2 weeks, which is, taking stuff into an environment, doing stuff, and then putting it in a new frame and having the metadata there from the original. And we were planning to do that in Visual Meta, and they were talking about it, doing it in XMP. XMP I'm kind of familiar with, because that's how we annotate photographs, especially when you put them up to a library or something. So it was very good. I've invited them to Future of Text. They will come to that. Invited them to volume 3 of the book, and they sounded interested in that. So it's good to have them as part of the community. They are now going to be doing some internal evangelism of this, which is good. And even though I'm speaking for all of you, we're in the context of Adobe nobodies. What we do have is a passion that is proven. We worked on this for a while, and we meet often. So it's not like it's just some little company saying, here's a new standard, do it, Adobe. It's a matter of they would appreciate, I think, our the fact that we're putting energy into it. Any questions or comments or stuffs?
Good news overall. Very nice. Very nice.
It's very good. I asked at the end, I said, because I was introduced to them by Vint, I don't want to mischaracterize my relationship with them. I said, I could easily say that I'm in a dialogue with Adobe, but what does that mean? I could have made an email sent to them that bounced. You know, that phrase is often misused. So Leonard particularly spent quite a lot of time saying that, you know, at the end of the day, we expect that there will be something like Visual Meta and XMP kind of combination happening. And, you know, he's very happy to, and also Andy, who represents, I forget the word now, but, you know, Providence and so on. Also very happy to be part of that. And Peter, thank you very much for your comments a long time ago and frequently about hashes and all of that stuff to make sure that the Visual Meta knows what it's referring to. That was a useful part of the conversation.
Oh, very good. I'm glad it was helpful.
Yeah, very helpful. So thank you. So it was very good. It was very real. I sent finally a follow-up message. Had to go for a walk with my wife afterwards. But to me, the world looks a bit different. It's not like they said, this is amazing. Can we start implementing on Tuesday? Of course not. But it also wasn't fobbing us off. It wasn't half an hour of this is why it's rubbish or why it can't be done or why you didn't understand. It was none of that. It was, we all agree metadata is crucial. Let's not hide it. And let's figure out different user groups. The one thing that I showed that I didn't expect to show, so I showed it live, which is always funny, was the concepts in author and how they export as a glossary. Because they talked about semantic data. And I said, this is an example where it's explicit from the student stating they believe so-and-so is so-and-so. And they found that very interesting because they kind of do the opposite. They're working with a lot of lawyers where they have to allow them to find text, but then find definitions more programmatically. So to come at it from two different ways, they thought was worthwhile, that we represent different perspectives and their immediate business concerns.
Yeah, it's interesting too that hearing you say that, because there will be also some users will have need to control what goes in the Visual Meta or not, so there isn't leakage of information out of documents. But I was really happy to hear that they thought the two could play together, because that's actually always been my thought from inception. I just don't see them as different. The problem really arises because normally in any room you've either got people who are mostly on the technical side of the fence, or they're on the purely not technical side of the fence. And so, you know, if you're on the non-technical side, stuff like RDF just makes your brain melt. And if you're on the other side, you sort of say, well, why would you not use this stuff? Because clearly it's what you use. And so there's never the meeting mind. So putting the two together, right, you know, to me just seems logical. And as we've said, over time, the point is this thing should find an equilibrium. Will it be using BibTeX or whatever in 10 years' time? No, probably not at all. But we'll have found something better, and that's where we're headed. So I don't think there's any downside in this at all.
There was one thing that came up towards the end as well, before I forget. They talked about things like Rome and all of those new things. And I said that even though Visual Meta, it's important, it's visual, sometimes it cannot be visual. So then I explained the copy as citation, which I hadn't mentioned before. I said that's an explicit example whereby it's of course hidden, but it's really, really crucial. And they talked about how, of course, they can support that because at least on the Mac, PDF is a native file format now. On Windows, not so much. Android, that's horrible in this context. So I said that in our group here, I mentioned our Monday, Friday group, that we have been discussing ideas and dreams such as being in an environment like Rome, copying an element of whatever, pasting it into a word processor, working with it. When you export as a PDF, all the stuff that and this is what reminded me, Mark, all the stuff that the author wants to have connected will be there when you export. So a reader then can interact with that bit of stuff that's just normal text, but because of Visual Meta has access to go back into the Rome environment. So we've talked so much about that here. So it was really good to have an opportunity that's something they're interested in too.
Just make sure you never send the links to our past remarks frustrated against PDF formats.
Yeah, that's another thing. I will be deleting all our YouTubes. So yeah, that was positive and interesting. Someone sat down on the sofa too heavily. Yeah, well, that's a.
There's a, because there's a. Sorry, Angela. There is an interesting aspect to this. I mean, hearing what Frode just described is I'm well aware that the getting from the sort of the dream of just moving stuff to it being right is tremendously finicky, because in the mind's eye, it's absolutely clear. Well, it's obviously this and it's obviously not that. But you know, getting to the point where we have so this is my bit in the future textbook, is, you know, getting to the point where we have tools that allow us to do that without it becoming, without you trying to write a book using a database interface sort of thing, which will be the technology first result. Is hard, but I think we can get there, and that is a really useful step towards you know, the concept of having augmented documents.
Sorry, Mark, you reminded me. 100 years today, Royal British Legion. Anyway, yeah, absolutely. So now, guys, as I said to them, you know, trying to be as plain and honest with them, and, you know, not pretending to be a big shot, because obviously I am not, and I'm talking to the giants. I said, I guess, you know, to make this happen, it's about politics and popularity. You know, we have to get others to follow it, and we have to be popular. So with my own work now, author is done today. It will be updated in the future, but I'm not going to be doing constant coding on it. There's no point either spending the money nor focusing on it. Reader will be focused over the next few weeks. There's a few little polishes and how they work together. So that means from January, I will be all about marketing, all about promoting what these things can actually do. So I think that also within the community, we should try to build stuff, but we should try to build stuff with an eye to evangelism. And kind of the layer we're missing is very much Adam's interest. So I think, Adam, if you can, instead of us sending you a screenshot of a mock-up and you just magically making it happen, maybe do the other way around, where you talk about what you find interesting, and we'll see how we can support that. Anyway, it's time to keep screaming, and it's time to get other people. The only real problem we have is Microsoft Word, which doesn't seem to have a structure for supporting this, because they treat citations and metadata in a very different way. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, do we have any documentation available on the .liquid file format so that we can start building tools to interoperate with that and build things that will natively be producing .liquid files that author and reader can open up and deal with using external shell tools and nifty scripting stuff like that?
Well, that's Jacob, basically. If you control click and do the show package, you will see that it's basically an RTF document with stuff around it. But we could, but I mean, if you have, Ega, not so loud, I'm in a meeting, please. Sorry, young man is home. You know, if you dig around a little bit, it'll be easier to then answer questions. It's proprietary, but not in a, oh, I have to protect my interests or anything, but it's just not something I've focused on opening. But if you have a specific question after having a brief look, yeah, I'll set you in touch with Jacob.
Yeah, because I remember maybe 5-10 years back, there was a command line tool for interacting with tinderbox files, and it was there, and I think Apple updated the OS and it broke, and whoever had developed it never bothered to carry it forward into the future. But it would be really nice to have something like that. And it wouldn't affect the marketing of Liquid either, because only somebody like me or Adam or Rafael would be going in and using a command line tool to augment Liquid files programmatically.
I think those scripts, Peter, were done by Les Carr, who actually is Frode, my erstwhile supervisor.
My current supervisor, yes. Adam, are you going to submit something to the book today or tomorrow? Rafael?
No.
Why don't you write a paragraph of why you're not doing it? Because I think that's really valid, the reasons you gave.
You could have a blank page and people can project their reasons.
What you know,
or insert 5 billion empty pages for most humans on Earth, and space is free. It compresses well.
That's a good quote. Space is free, it compresses well. You know, Tristram's Diary of Tristram Shandy Gentleman, whatever. You should have a look at that book. It's really fascinating. On one page, it's black and empty. There's nothing on it. And you read and it says, picture the most beautiful woman you possibly could imagine, and even more beautiful. You know, she can't be illustrated, hence the empty page opposite. You know, it worked. That's from the 1700s. But why? Yeah, I honestly think that if you write a paragraph saying, you know, I find it, you know, as a coder and so on, you know, just to write things in a block of text just isn't useful. I think that is a really valuable and valid statement to have in a book like this.
Yeah, but it is useful. It's just that I can't really find the time to do it properly, or not half.
Just do it as a
Either.
paragraph. Just mute the rest of us. Do it now. It can be this big. Remember, in volume 1, we have some entries that are really, really brief. And they're absolutely not the worse for it, because when someone reads this volume, that's something they can refer to. You know, they can even cite you as you know, like I can imagine a student saying, well, as Adam Wern said, I'm not going to write this, let me code it.
Or they can just quote me now, as Adam didn't say in volume 2. In theater, silence is the most important part, and maybe it is here as well.
Have you seen the
Well,
bicycle?
you could do it join the dots. You could have a big NO, and you just, you know, you draw a line around all the numbers, and you self-discover the article.
As Adam didn't say, that's actually an interesting concept, isn't it?
There is lots of information to be gained to see what people don't say, or what isn't said. But it takes more effort to uncover that.
Is that related to the concept of lacuna? But anyway, in terms of the general thing, today is a good day. We have got our tiny little fish hook and the big whale. See if we can be pulled along with them, and also exert some force in a direction we think is more useful. So that's nice. I'm trying to be flowery like Mark Anderson. Did you notice? You just can't say a straight sentence, that man. Anyway, so where would you guys like the dialogue to go in the future, now that we have kind of made a bit of a success here, and it's all about community now, growing the community and growing the dialogue, right?
I agree. The more people we have discussing, the richer the conversations will be, I think. But you know, in all big groups, there's a pro and a con, because whenever if we have, you know, 20 people, you know, every Monday and Friday, not everybody will have a chance to participate as well. So then I think that's where the other platforms will come in, and they're going to be useful. So then we can start using, you know, the Circle community more, Twitter more, and some of these other places. And I feel like those parallel conversations will bring topics of discussions for Monday and Friday, which are going to be nice.
Yes, and of course, Alan is being very pushy with the newsletter, and we're all excited by that. Of course, you, Rafael, have worked on aspects of that for quite a while. So we need to decide on things like guest speakers to dig out of the book and so on. But yeah, that's an interesting discussion.
I'd like us to take a look at RSS and whether we could do something RSS-like in Visual Meta that might get more traction than RSS did.
That's really interesting, Peter. RSS is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing, and it's been completely ignored and just stomped on. Yeah, I mean, okay, so I had an email service before most of you were born called Liquid Information. It was called Liquid Mail. And one of the things, it was web-based. So if you subscribe to a news group discussion, if there was an update and a discussion you subscribe to, you will get an email. but that email would be pure HTML. So if you clicked on it immediately, you would read the one post that you hadn't read. But if you waited a week, it would still stay in your email inbox, but when you clicked on it, you would get all the email, all the discussion threads listed. It's basically just a command to say, show whatever's missing here, right? So the idea of what we can do with RSS type is very, very interesting.
Well, RSS strikes me as just, I mean, sorry, I just avoid words like just, but obviously, I mean, to a certain extent, we have much of the content that's going to the RSS. So it's another way of exposing the document metastructure, metadata structure for sort of like live consumption. So if it's accessible within the document package, and as long as it's not causing massive blank to the file, the per document structure, that's actually quite interesting. I mean, what that says to me is there's some internal thought to be given to the effectively how the metadata that becomes the visual meta is stored internally, such that if you need to get it programmatically as opposed to reading it off the page, so it's the same data in the same fields, it's just kept potentially in a different way. So for instance, it can be programmatically, more easily programmatically queried. So whether you're just building stuff off your own system or maybe working across maybe your own little network or something, it might mean that we can leverage again another existing technology without having to reinvent the wheel to give more augmentation.
Everyone's louder than you in the background. Can you move your mic up or something like that, maybe?
I'll move the mic up a bit. Hold on a second. Settings. So I'll just boost the mic a bit. Microphone.
I think what you're saying, Mark, is maybe combine BibTeX with RSS. Even just that in itself is interesting.
Is that better?
It's a little bit.
Can you hear better?
The mic is here. Just hold it up.
I don't have the mic's in the camera.
Oh, okay.
So, I suppose what I try and sort of reduce what I said earlier, it's just the fact that effectively it's all a bunch of metadata. If the metadata, it may transpire that, for instance, expressing the metadata or making it queryable in the document as RSS, whether or not it's written in an existing VM form when you print it out, may offer us some additional affordances. I mean, what one upside is that you don't have to go and reinvent RSS. Someone will always leap out the corner and say, "Oh, but I have a much better thing," you know. And when I've written it, it will eclipse this. But there's always one of those. But I speaking to what Peter was asking, I think it's quite an interesting idea. You know, RSS is actually, you know, although it's not the shiny kid on the block anymore, it's really interesting tech, and it's certainly robust and out there.
I mean, the problem with RSS is you need an RSS server somewhere. You know, I looked into it a short while ago, and there were many services. This is, of course, for podcasts, but RSS podcast in some ways is, of course, the same thing. However, a dream situation, and I think you guys agree on this, is you're reading a document written by, let's say, someone in this group, and then you want to reply to it. You hit a keyboard shortcut for reply. So it opens up in your word processor some sort of an ID, so it knows what document you're talking about, not just a citation. And you do your writing, blah, 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 export it. As you export the new document, it sees what it relates to, puts the whole thing on an RSS feed, so that the original writer can be alerted that there is a reply as a full document, you know, using RSS as a chain. But then there's the server infrastructure, right? It's probably not that hard to write, but if we want to make it scalable, then write a document. Here we go.
So I hope that makes it a bit clearer. I know it's given the background noise. And the answer is I don't know. It's beyond my smarts. But given that you can probably effectively query a document because it's a static structure and you can sort of parse bits out of it. What I think is what's sort of implicit in my idea there is that you have a discoverable section of RSS within the document.
What does Brendan think of all this?
I'm having a day, gentlemen. This guy behind me is really wreaking havoc on my life. I was just looking at an article. I read something a ways back about how Anchor, the podcasting service, innovated on RSS and how it kind of readopted this. And I was just searching for it, and I unfortunately couldn't find the notes because there was kind of just a basic, I guess, kind of frame change that they made that allowed them to use RSS to really advance their entire market. So I wanted to dive into that so I could provide some insight, and I have not found it yet. Is anyone familiar with that background? How Anchor used RSS? All right, I got to find this.
That's interesting. So in preparation for the meeting today, obviously I've been freaking out several times this week. And, anyway, one of the things I decided I have to do is some sort of a presentation. So I did a really brief one, but I also thought about presenting the bigger thing. So I've started making two different sales pitches, actually, one for students, one for teachers. So I've written the one for teachers, and it's such a useful thing, I think, to do an ad. Because as I write the ad, and then there's a benefit because you can do this and that and all of that stuff, there actually comes up a few things like, hang on, that's not possible yet. So we got to code it. So I'm wondering, we've all talked about scenarios before, and, it hasn't really coalesced into anything. But if you want to write some ad type stuff for what you want to do, it may be useful. It's okay. I mean, an example for me was the glossary. Once it's in the reader, the whole do command F to find it is nice, but it's not obvious. So I just wrote, at the top level menu, there are all the concepts. Okay, so now we have to put it there, stuff like that. So, I mean, maybe for you, Adam, with your concern about time and interested in coding, maybe you write a bit of an ad for how you want the environment you're looking at to work, like almost like a user guide.
For who? For you, or who is a target group? The reader.
I was thinking the book. It could be a thing for the book. I'll read you the first paragraph of the one that I wrote, so you can see what I mean, guys. So the heading is Why Teachers Appreciate Author. Mark made me move away from Why Teachers Love Author. The most immediate reason teachers appreciate Author is that it exports PDF documents not only in a clean academic format, but that the documents are augmented. This means that teachers can click on citations to see the full reference information instantly rather than have to go back and forth in the document. They also have powerful ways to and so on. And then it goes into a separate section on Author can help students write more intentionally since Author features a way for them to define when writing, etc. So, writing it is useful because you can do this. It is useful because you can do this. Maybe a useful way to approach things there.
Yeah, I'd add the conversation I had with Fred earlier was that I just mindful of the fact that is this sound better, by the way?
Yep.
Find a microphone. Okay, right.
Much better.
Sorry about that earlier. Anyway, noise is off now. Finish. I was reflecting on the fact that there's so much of a hyperbole around the world that so many words get co-opted. Because one of the other things I was thinking about with interactivity. is valid in this context for the documents, and yet it's a word that's been almost hammered into insignificance by being overused so much. So, you know, that kind of thing wants to be reclaimed, whereas some of the other terms we can probably find a way around. Otherwise, it tends to mean for some readers that they're instantly thinking, okay, so what am I being sold that I'm not being told? When actually your genuine intent is to say, no, there's something really useful here. Anyway, so that was the earlier thought.
Don't remember, you remember Joe, right? Joe from Doug Engelbart's 1962 paper. You know, it's such an evocative way of describing it.
No, sorry. Yes, I do. Is the answer.
What's the latest on the community building for the newsletter, Frode?
Not much. I think we need to have a bit more talk with Alan on specifically that, because he's got a lot of energy for that and enthusiasm, and to align with what Rafael's been doing. The idea is to announce it on the 9th of December, or because that happens to be Doug Demo plus Vince and Ismail are doing a presentation that's relevant to this. But it is just basically having at least a monthly, maybe a bi-weekly speaker who may not even speak that much, but it'll be in the book so we know their work. And then that is the topic of conversation. And then maybe transcribe that for the book. And other than that, it is trying to have a bit more theme. But I think the problem with Rebels Without a Clue like us is we are all going in slightly different directions. It's hard to align around one piece of work, so to speak, other than the book itself, either through contributing articles or how the book should exist. Sorry.
Go ahead, Adam.
Also that it's, I find it nice to be thinking about something before the meeting, a common thing. It's nice to, when we do that, when we send a few emails beforehand and have a half clear starting point, at least I find it very much easier, because now maybe someone has thought about RSS, and I have been thinking about prompts this week since last time, and I don't feel it's natural to force a prompts in there as a speaking prompts for today. So it could be just a loose theme for some of the meetings would be very nice. So you can think about something, and maybe thinking just like a good brainstorming session, that it's nice to prepare beforehand to get to not get the group think early, but get different perspectives and then compare notes. That would be very nice. But of course, there are also things that come up with short notice meetings, and you are very meeting centric, for you're a networking genius, so there are other things as well to it.
Kind of you to say, but I don't agree, but thank you. I don't know if even about meeting centric. I just think, you know, like concepts, where do they live? They live in humans. You know, financial institutions, VCs and all that. Who do they invest in? Ideas? No. Companies? No. They invest in people. You know, and if we don't have people here, you know, what is Adobe? It is actually the two guys I met today, as far as we're concerned. So that's why it's so important, you know, for us to just chat, you know, with different frequencies. Now, is there a way, guys, that what Adam said, he can now open up a word processor type thing, write stuff about this conversation, click a button, and whoever is in the community gets that message as a document, and they can then comment on that nicely in a word processor type thing, and we all get it. Of course, you can do this with email. The only problems with that is it gets really messy in the threading, and it gets hard to find, and it gets difficult to reuse. So if we can find an elegant way to do that, where we essentially build a book over time, I think that would have real value. So then the book would have to be in pieces distributed via RSS or email or through some kind of a new format or whatever.
Well, one good thing is at least we now have, well, and you know, within a week or so, we'll have sort of 2 lots of the book to actually play around with. So thus far, we've had the feature of the few text. Now have some text, and it may or may not on further inspection be exactly what we want in terms of a, you know, a nice evenly distributed set of articles and things. But nonetheless, we have something we can play with. So we actually have a corpus that's within the boundaries of this project that we can actually begin to experiment on. So it might be that one of the first things we might want to do is just fill it down that, notwithstanding the fact it's around in author and other formats, we might need to just think, well, can we, you know, whether, for instance, it would help Adam to have that information, I don't know, just a big JSON file or something. In other words, just so we can play tunes on it, because I do, unless I'm not a coder, I know enough to know that it's difficult to make something if none of the bits you need are in the box in front of you. You can have the idea, but having something that's, in other words, fudging some elements just to get to the point where you can say, okay, this is worth now building properly from scratch, is actually, I don't think is a cheat, and is remarkably useful.
In author, you can post to WordPress. I haven't done it in a while because I've had to focus on PDF, and I think it's actually a little bit broken, that functionality. But in principle, having in a piece of software a means to publish somehow is, of course, an obvious thing. So that's why I'm wondering, and thank you, Mark, for the first comments.
But could we bootstrap? Huh?
I just said Adam's unmuted. Yes, go.
Yeah, could we bootstrap this by just having a shared folder, or dropping things in a folder for every meeting, for just as a, it will be some sort of chronological, if you sort it by date or creation date or something, you get a very, of course, messy form, but it's a starting point to see what we have. Imagine that all these meetings had a folder that we could share things into.
I think
on that point, just jumping into what Adam is saying, it would be amazing if we could use me for this, because then we can have boards of different kinds of content, and you guys can be the beta testers for what we have working so far. That's something that we could try.
That would be wonderful. I was afraid you were going to say something about Google Drive or Dropbox, because the problem there is going on a web page to actually access it. So if something more specific, that would be really, really, yeah, that'd be good. And the parallel that's becoming quite interesting now is, you know, nobody has home phones anymore. You don't call a room, you call a person, right? So also text messages, especially now that you can do it on a computer, has become the default way to get in touch with the people you know best, right? You don't send an email to your brother or sister or whoever. So email has become quite a dry medium now, more formal. So what it looks like we can do here is a new temporal communication where it's not like you write a full academic article or a book, but you can write a properly, beautifully framed statement that can be dealt with a statement that relates to it or cites it well. Rafael, how can we do that with me?
That wouldn't work on me. I think it's more related to multimedia content. But for that asynchronous communication, you know, we use things like Telegram and sending videos using Loom and things like that. I much prefer quick messages than writing email. For me, writing email always has that process of sitting down and structuring an email. Even if it's like quick emails, I find it that it's not as free-flowing as something like Telegram or something that is part of a bigger group. And in these apps, they usually work in 2 ways. I think there's, I forgot the names, but one is like, it's just groups, and the other is rooms, I think. And in groups, it's just like a regular group. Everybody can participate in the conversations. But in the other, you have more of a broadcast kind of thing. So there's like one admin that posts content and everybody else is a listener. So then the admin can post the updates of whatever is happening in that environment. But I used to use that when we were doing a big project and I had to update the whole team at once. And it was an environment where you could find all the updates for the project in one single place. I know people use, things like Slack or Discord or things like that. Those can also be used for asynchronous communication. The difference between something like Telegram and Slack or Discord is all of the different areas and rooms that you can create, all of the different environments. And I feel like we have that with something like the Circle community, because we can create that structure on the side as well, but it feels like it's more permanent than something like Slack or Discord, which things tend to get lost in the flood of content that people publish. At least that's my experience between those areas.
Having a human editor or curator or something in the loop is, of course, very useful. But an interesting thing is, when Twitter happened, it was the first ever mass-to-mass communication medium in the world, ever. That was a crazy thing. Anybody could follow anyone. So the idea of publishing used to be a specific thing. Now it can be many things, including that, you published on Twitter. Potentially billions of people can see it, but chances are it'll be your two friends, right? What about if we, in this context, think of the idea of publishing to a document, right? So we maybe have a journaled version. So every quarter we say closed, next one. So when we write these comments in our community, we are publishing to, let's say, the Future of Text Friday, Monday group, whatever we call it. As long as we have access to this, we publish to that evolving volume rather than to some sort of a feed or something else. Does that make sense as a model?
Yeah, it makes sense.
I think Peter has a comment.
Yeah, I really liked how the chat circles environment dissolved the distinction between instant messages and larger conversations. Instead of having rooms or channels, you could position your avatar closer to other groups of people. And you basically had a 2D space that would represent the room. Frode might be at one set of coordinates. Mark might be at another set of coordinates. If I got myself so that I was within so many pixels of both of them, I could simultaneously hear them both. If I just wanted to talk to Frode, I could move closer to Frode's avatar so that Mark's avatar would be out of the hearing range of what I was saying. So anyone within a certain radius of my point. So if we were doing something like that, you could simply have the 2D coordinates associated with the messages, and then you could go back afterwards and have a spatial navigation as a way of filtering. The other thing I was thinking about in those terms was, in the original chat circle model, you have the 1 2D space, people are at fixed locations, and you can move between the fixed locations. What if instead we completely inverted that and made you the center of the universe and gave you the ability to drag other avatars closer or further away from you? So if I wanted to be listening to what Brandon was saying and what Mark was saying, they were opposite ends of the room, I could simply grab their 2 avatars from the perimeter of a circle and drag them close enough to me so that I could hear them. And it could be at a couple levels. So slightly close. Now imagine like you had 3 concentric circles. The third circle would be out of range. The second circle would be within shout range. And the first circle would be within ordinary talk range. And then you could even have one for whisper range. It was a little bit tighter. And depending upon how close I chose to drag each of their avatars, I could control which set of participants I was listening to and at what granularity of what they're saying. And then for the actual data structure, it would just be all of the statements made and the coordinates that they were at the time they were made. And then you're getting to control, as the viewer, how close you wanted those different participants to be to where your focus of attention was. It would almost be as if you had multiple avatars, only instead of having multiple avatars, the multiple avatars are all fused together. And again, you're just sort of like reversing it for like almost like a derivative, if you imagine it that way, of the overlaps of the different spaces of the different avatars. Do you get what I'm saying here? Does that make any sense? I probably need a diagram to illustrate it.
It does make sense, but we're thinking asynchronous when this is basically synchronous originally, to choose how to build things. But yeah. Yeah, interesting. But going forward, guys, what shall we try to focus on? Shall we maybe say that on Monday, we really just talk about how to enlarge the community and just have a community focused discussion, or where do you want to go? Having started a proper dialogue with Leonard and Andy, I feel that there is a certain energy and also a certain peace. It's a little less stressful. And I'm going to try to chase some others, but what do you guys want to do in this community? By the way, the TV series Community, the best ever. If you haven't watched it, just binge it.
An idea that I have is in order for us to create or at least discuss or having discussion points for Monday and Friday in either Circle or anywhere else, we would, if anybody wants to showcase something or talk about a specific point, they add their idea to the agenda. And then the agenda cannot, exceed, for example, I don't know, 5 topics, because sometimes we go, we talk for a long time on some topics. So then the agenda for Monday and Fridays is made up of these 5 topics, and these 5 topics are proposed by people from the community. And then once those 5 topics are full, then we have our agenda for Monday or Friday. And then that keeps, I don't know, that keeps going. It seems like a way to have different conversations from different people and always keeping it fresh. The problem with that is there's a difference between fresh conversations and in-depth conversations. And when would the in-depth conversations happen? So it's always that that equilibrium between if we want to do a deep dive or we want to talk about new things.
That's a good point. On that, one thing that really annoys me about Zoom is you can't do anything when you're not there. For instance, times when I've been running late for you guys, it would have been really nice for me to be able to leave a message saying, I'll be there in 3 minutes, or we're now off by an hour or whatever. So you can go in and it's not an empty Zoom room. The reason I'm saying it in relation to that, Rafael, is, to have that kind of agenda, it has to be obviously shared somehow. And if it's shared via email, it always becomes a bit of a headache who it should be sent to. Do we include only the ones who are here at 90% of the time? Do we include everybody in the community? How do we do that? Is there a go-to place? Maybe we can use Circle for that, actually. That we have a Circle place where we do exactly that. Yeah, I kind of talked my voice through that one.
Yeah, I feel that it would be either on Circle or on something like Telegram, because we can pin messages on top, and using either Telegram or Discord or Slack, there's those little bots that you can have, votings or I don't even think we're going to need voting because, the community is small. So the topics won't be overwhelming. But
I just logged into our Circle and looked at the list of new members. We have a member from World Escorts Hub at Outlook.com. So we may have reached the size where we're getting spammed here, people. Who's on Telegram? Are you all on Telegram? Rafael made me go on Telegram.
So what messaging app do people usually use? Because Telegram is the one. WhatsApp is the biggest one, but I don't like it. So we use Telegram. And then there's one called Signal, which is open source, private, things like that.
What's that? Is that a TV remote control?
It's a telephone.
What?
People who know ring me on the telephone because if they're ringing my mobile, it's somewhere in the house. I mean, I find it when I'm going out, but I don't use it really when I'm here because I have all these
Mark,
screens.
do you not have continuity set up on your Mac Apple world?
I wouldn't know what that is.
It's amazing. It just means that if you're sitting on your Mac, there's a phone call, you just click answer on your Mac.
Well,
Even
That's not a feature.
I've tried that. Well, actually, what happens is every device, about 3 iPads and everything, all phones, and by the time I've answered one of them, it's decided to answer on a different machine. Is actually how it works.
Well, no, it used to be like that. It's actually gotten pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the incrementals. You love your landline. Yeah, well, that's your romantic.
Yeah, no, I
thing.
no, I
Oh, no,
don't.
Peter was saying. Peter was saying.
I'd also say I share some love for email, but I mean, because I have the number of times I have a conversation that goes like, somebody asks something, I send them an email. So could you send me a shorter email? Could you describe it more succinctly? And I'll send them an email back saying, read my last email. And then I go reply back, oh, right. And we've got out of the habit of reading because sometimes the answer normally is as long as it needs to be. If you're trying to engage with the question at hand and trying to answer some things North Division's income is up by this much, this thing just doesn't work. So I don't think it's a particularly defunct thing. All these messaging things are fine if you're basically just swapping very short bits of information or attention things backwards and forwards. I find it less good for any considered answer for something. But I belong to the age of steam, so I'm past redemption.
I'd like to see one with a slight built-in delay. How many times have you had a typo and then you see the message appear in the sent messages stream and then you say, oh my God, why didn't I catch that typo? If instead there was like a 5-second delay after the message appears to give you a chance to mouse over that message and edit it before it actually goes up for real. Oh, that would be wonderful.
Google Mail has that. When I was working up in the government, you were required to turn that on, so that when you sent your thing to everyone in the department, so you're a bunch of feckless losers. It gave you a couple of minutes to redact that before it actually went out, or you address people in unparliamentary language. So there is. I don't know how other systems have it, but I think Gmail definitely has such a thing where effectively there's a built-in delay to the send, so you can sort of do this thing of see your mistake and use the Omega 13 device to travel backwards in time and redact it. Sorry, that was a Galaxy Quest reference.
Oh, I got it. I loved it. By Grabthar's hammer, you shall be avenged.
So, there you go.
Wait, there's 3 people on this call who haven't seen Galaxy Quest.
Which one? What's it called?
Galaxy Quest.
It's lovely. It's a really, really nice. If you like it, I mean, if you enjoy sci-fi,
and it is family friendly. Spouses who may not be into technology or sci-fi, whatever, will like it too. It's one of Emily's favorite movies.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's a really gentle homage to sort of Star Trek and all that sort of thing. You don't need to watch that to enjoy it. And I won't spoil.
Rafael and I are waiting for the App Store version of it.
Oh, you've got to see it. Tim Allen basically plays the William Shatner character, and they have Sigourney Weaver in there and interactions at the fan conventions. And there's a beautiful scene. I don't want to spoil too much, but he really goes off on one of the fans who was nagging him about technical details from the series. You have to see it. It's absolute genius.
Brendan, you haven't seen it either? One second.
Giving me some great insight here, though. It's going to be nice.
These young kids today, they have no sense of our critical popular culture.
it will be free. It will be free at point of delivery. I'm guessing it's so old that I don't think anyone will have the brass neck to charge you to watch it on something like the Primes or something. But it's funny. It falls into that category of a movie that's rewatchable because you know what the story is, but you still laugh because it comes from a place of love, I suppose they'd say.
The studio was making another movie at the same time. I forget what the movie was. It was a really big one. So they quite literally were not paying attention to this. And also, the little the studio execs saw, they felt it was a children's movie because it was a bit sci-fi-ish. So it was entirely under-resourced at the time, but it is absolutely a classic. Anyway.
And a very quotable movie. It has a lot of very good lines in it, unexpectedly.
Say you, because you haven't seen Hamilton.
Well, there are also things very quotable. No, I haven't, as it happens.
We don't have a sentence in this house without Edgar saying, Hamilton. Anyway, that's all that. So, yeah, today was good. Good catch up. And we've decided we need to figure out how to build community and how to build the systems around it. One thing that is nice, the Telegram is fine, but also just texting for those who want to share their numbers. My number is very shareable. Same, actually, I'll give you my Apple email. Hang on.
Yeah, for Rafael, since you were asking, I use Twitter mainly as a read only. I don't tweet much, but I read. I get a lot of my inputs from it. I use it as a news feed, really.
Yeah, I use Twitter mostly as read only as well.
But the biggest problem is that one thing that we forgot to do when designing social media was to put a political switch in. So what's really disappointing is someone who 1 in 10 posts is really interesting about the subject you're in, and the rest is about views that you may or may not want to engage in. It's not whether you agree them or not, but that's not why you're following. Mm-hmm. That's like the other 9 are just you sitting in the back of the house while they're moaning about stuff in the world, and you're thinking, and this is time in my life I won't get back, and it sort of puts me off these media. But that's it. It's actually basically Twitter. I used to use Facebook under duress for the university, but I've given up. It just makes me too depressed to read it now.
Yeah.
I put my iCloud email here for those who would want to text me. But of course, that means if you text me, I know who you are. So it works both ways, which is kind of interesting.
And also that it appears on the video because you tab over to your... So don't send anything too private to you, Frode.
Yeah, well, the Liquidizer. Yeah, Liquidizer has been my name forever in gaming. Also data search, all the data. Anyway, yes, that's good. So shall we wrap it up for today? I want to go have a dinner and celebrate.
I definitely want to see the Liquidizer movie.
Have a good weekend, guys. Stay safe.
Go celebrate it, Frode.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be pasta for dinner, so it'll be amazing. Bye, guys.
Well done. Take care. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.